Many nonprofits in central Indiana have recently undergone leadership changes. Newfields, the state's largest art museum, is one of them. Thank you for joining today's Charitable Advisors podcast. This is Shari, Finnell, editor of Not-for-Profit News. Bryan, Orander, and I recently talked to Dr. Colete Burnett, the new president and CEO at Newfields. Dr. Burnett talked about a new definition for museums and what's ahead for Newfields under her leadership. So welcome, Dr. Burnett, to Indianapolis, to the Midwest. We're so glad to have you join me and Bryan on this podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Nice to meet both of you.
Well, we would like to start off by just introducing you to our audience. I know that this has been big news that Newfields has a new CEO, so we're glad that you're here now. You've been on the job for 2 months now?
It'd be 2 months into September. I started August the 1st.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about you and then also about how you came to this position at Newfields?
So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, so I'm coming back to the Midwest. My mom is actually in Ohio, so part of the attraction to Newfields was we were attempting to get back to be closer to her. And so Indianapolis is a prime place, and I've always come to Indianapolis and always loved the time that we've been here for different, we've come for different reasons. So I'm a military wife. My husband's retired. We're a retired military family. My husband's a retired Air Force officer. So we've lived all around the world, and you appreciate four distinct seasons. And having been in Texas for the last 7 years, we have hot and hotter. Those are the two seasons in Texas. So I had a good journey there. I decided to retire from my presidency after being there for 7 years as a president of a historically Black college, Huston-Tillotson, there in Austin, and was really looking for a career change out of higher education for this next chapter of my life. But I wanted to stay at a cultural institution where we have impact on people's lives. And the mission at Newfields to enrich lives with exceptional experiences with art and nature was like my personal passion and my professional passions intersect. And I think that's a gift when we do something professionally that we have deep passion about personally. So here I am.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Me too.
Just to build on that just a little bit, I think for many of us, we would say, okay, so you're in higher ed, and now to come to at least here in Indianapolis, we see Newfields, formerly the Indianapolis Museum of Art, as a pretty big, one of the larger art museums, in the country, and that seems a big change from higher ed. How did you kind of navigate that? Hey, this looks like a great opportunity for me. Why now?
I thought it was a change also. But after being here for 2 months, I see that it's not really a change because Huston-Tillotson is an anchor institution there in Austin. And I view Newfields as an anchor institution here in Indianapolis. I mean, we're 140 years old. And even though people associate Newfields with the Indianapolis Museum of Art, we are a complex. It's a campus where we have very diverse things here on our campus. We have the gardens, which are extraordinary. We have the park, the Virginia B. Fairbanks Park, which is extraordinary. And then we have the, best in class Indianapolis Museum of Art. And in all my travels, I cannot think of many cities, many locations globally that have that kind of jewel in their backyard. So as an attraction to come to the city. And my goal, I shared this with my board at my first board meeting. I know that my assignment will be over when I hear two people talking and one says to the other, I'm going to Indianapolis. And the other person says, oh my gosh, you have to go to Newfield. It will change your life. That's when I know that my assignment will be over, because my work, my aspiration, my vision for Newfields in concert with my board of trustees and the board of governors is to lift the brand in such that we really are enriching lives. And so that's exciting to me because it is a campus, and leadership is leadership. Managing people is managing people, managing entities is managing entities. I have facilities. I have a finance office. I have an advancement office. All those are very commonalities. We have membership fees, which is like tuition. We have the operations, which is operations. So it's a lot of similarities. I'm an art consumer, not an art aficionado. So we will be hiring a director of the art museum. I'm not a gardener. I garden, but I can't garden like Jonathan Wright, who's over our gardens. And managing entities and managing to a mission, being data driven. I'm an engineer by nature, making decisions from data. All those things are leadership qualities that I believe I have and are something that, totally transferable skills into another anchor institution.
Yeah. Well, let me take out another question here, Shari, if I can. And this is, I think, potentially transferable. You've done this before. You say, you've moved around a lot, so you've been in a lot of different roles. What have you learned in terms of coming into a new organization, coming into a new community? Because you talked about a lot of the commonalities, a lot of the building blocks are similar, but how do you kind of come in and establish yourself, both in that institution and begin in the community?
I really appreciate the question. A mentor, I'm a strong believer in mentorship. And so I too have mentors, even though I'm in this, the more chapters within my life, is that you are on a marathon, not a sprint. And I'm a type A, I'm driven, don't have an off button. So I have to keep reminding myself of that and do a lot of listening. In fact, I'm conducting listening sessions on the campus to talk to every functional area here on campus and listen to hear, not to respond. Because I've learned over the course of my life that you can have a lot of strategies that you bring into an organization that you believe work, and the culture, I can't think of the author, but it's Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast. I think that is very true, very real. So you have to learn the culture and then devise what strategies will be transformational for the institution. And not everything needs to be changed. Some things need to be shined up. Some things need to change, but not everything needs to be changed. And you learn that by listening. And also, people know a lot more about Newfields than I do. Now, 2 years from now, I will know a lot more about Newfields than the average person. Because I will have studied it so much. As senior leader, you become the institution in many, many ways as far as what you know about the institution.
So, Dr. Burnett, you mentioned that when certain things happen, you'll know that your job is done here at Newfields. And I assume the same thing happened in your previous position. Can you give some insights into how do you navigate whether or not it's time to move on? We've had a lot of changes at a lot of organizations here, and nonprofit organizations here.
I think it's intuitive, and sometimes we try to smash that voice away and not hear it, where you know that you're not the leader to take the organization into its next phase. It's when you are in meetings and you're not open to new ideas. You start becoming the person to say, we've always done it that way. Then you're not being an open leader. And when you wake up in the morning and you're not excited about going to work, I know in my last assignment that I would go to bed at night exhausted and then wake up the next morning, but couldn't wait to get back to the campus. So I'm in that space now where I, go home at the end of the day and I'm mentally fatigued because of all the knowledge that I'm consuming. But then I wake up the next morning and I literally cannot wait to get back to campus to consume more. So when you find yourself in a place where you're dreading going to, and you see it as work, particularly when you work in cultural institutions or not-for-profit institutions, then you have to have that belly. You have to have that fire in your belly all the time. And if that fire in your belly is going away, you're not helping your institution. And if you're not taking good care of yourself, mentally or physically, or even your soul, then you're not being a good leader. If you find yourself in a space where you don't feel like you're adding to the value of the mission, then it's time to go. So my last assignment, I knew that I was time to retire because of the institution's needs to go to the next phase. That was not something that I saw myself doing to carry the institution to the next phase. And it's good for the institution because that institution is 145 years old. Newfields is 140 years old. So I want to be a part of the window in time that people look back and we did great things during that time. I don't want to be the window in time where people look back and say, what were they doing during that 2022 through 32? Like, what was happening there? So, as a leader, when you're not you're not making impactful decisions for your organization. And when people start saying things to you like questioning your decisions to a certain degree, like people will question your decisions, but when you don't see change and evolution, I think all organizations need to be transformational and change based.
So that's a good segue to what do you see happening at Newfields under your leadership in the next few years? Yeah.
So my 10 years, I've already claimed my 10 years.
I was thinking it's kind of a niche that you go into organizations when they're 140 years old.
I know. I thought about that the other day because I'm excited. We will be celebrating our 140th year. We're going to have a long birthday party to march up our 140th year. So I got excited about that. And I started thinking when I joined Houston, it was 143. So I have something with that 140. So I'm going to claim my 10 years to start with. I want, during my time, my tenure, I want Newfields to move to a place where we're truly that the museum is truly following that new definition of museums from the International Council of Museums about imparting knowledge, treasuring history and heritage, being the keeper of that, and then being one who is accessible and diverse and sustainable in all facets of it. And then for the garden, our living collection to continue to grow. We have hybrid plants, hybrid orchids here. That will be one of a kind, that will blossom, and that the park is truly open to all families. We plan on having major art installations be in the park, which are functional. Rarely do you get to touch and feel art and make it like a play space for young people. So I'm excited about that. So that the museum has transformed, the garden is transformed, and the park is transformed as well. And that we've listened to all communities, and that we're open to all. We had our opening for the We the Culture from the 18 Artist Collective happened this past Thursday, and the energy that was in the room was astounding. It was like a personal reflection moment for me to see the artists and their families. Another commonality at the university, we served mostly first generation students, of which I am one, first in my family to go to college. So we would have 5,000 people on campus of a graduating class of like 200 to 300. So we started saying that we graduate families, not individuals. So that opening exhibition, when I saw those families of those artists, many of who are native to Indianapolis, being in the museum and seeing their family, their child or their partner or their cousin, having something that's in an exhibition in Newfields, I felt like we were doing an exhibition of family work, not just individuals. And that's to be able to honor living artists in that way, I think is just a wonderful, magical is the term I was using that evening, moment. And it was personally rewarding for me as someone who grew up in Cleveland, going to the art museums as a child. And as Stevie Wonder said, in it, but not of it. I mean, I was in the room with the art, but I was not of the art. So, and that's transformational. And the magic in that room of just such a diverse audience of people from all walks of life in Indianapolis, that's what enriches lives through experiences with art and nature. And I'm excited to be the person that's, it's a gift for me to actually be the person that's leading through this moment in Newfield's history.
It seems like, and this is not necessary. I think I'm not asking this as a Newfield specific question, but it seems, art museums or museums in general tend to be treated as kind of a niche, and they're different, ways. And again, you can answer this to Newfields or just kind of, you're probably on a steep learning curve about museums and different approaches and strategies and things that people use to get different audiences in and to be more accessible. And even you've got, beautiful real estate there in the parks and the acreage and all those kinds of things, but you're not like downtown where it's easy for, a person who's downtown or at a convention or, maybe some other, activities, you're kind of a destination. People have to say, hey, we want to go there. what kinds of things are happening in the museum world that you see are going to maybe apply or transfer to Newfields, or that just are catching your eye?
Thank you for that question. First of all, I want to say, we're 15, 20 minutes the most from downtown, but you wouldn't know it when you get in those gardens. And that's a part of the narrative, the story that we have to tell. Like, we opened up the largest pollinator meadow in this area of the country and in the park. And we were, if you do it, bird's eye to bird's eye, probably 2-3 miles, I don't know, away from downtown, but you would never know it. So that's a story we have to tell, that we are like an oasis, a getaway, a space. You can do this for lunch. You can come here for lunch and sit in the garden and really, have some quiet time right here in Newfield, to come to the park, right in Newfields, to be able to experience that. So that's a part of our story, our narrative we have to tell. And that's also, to segue into this, the second part of the second part of your question is, that's something that other museums want to have, is that approachable kind of, space, like for retreats, convention getaways, dinners in the Loom, that the digital art, that's a transformational moment. And to be able to grow your collections is another transformational moment that museums are experiencing right at this time. So we are a learning lab here on this campus. And I've said this in a couple other forums. I am an educator. That's, deep in my bones, so to speak. So education is the great equalizer. And we want to use Newfields as this learning lab for future horticulturists, not just future artists, but future master gardeners, future chemists. We have a whole conservator, the area where we conserve the art. Even our people who set up those exhibitions, we have a whole technology behind the scenes that happens with, the displays and exhibits themselves. So we want to build that infrastructure around what happens in museums and in gardens to attract young people, and in partnership with the different public school systems as our neighbors, because we're a learning lab. Biology, that park is the pollinator meadow. So if you had asked me what a pollinator meadow was 1 year ago, I would say, I don't know, a meadow that pollinates, I don't know. But now I'm like versed on pollinator meadows and what they do in the ecosystem. Even one of my personal passions, once again, is about environmental justice. And what happens, what we are as caretakers of our environment. And a garden and a park is the ultimate in nature's space for what happens in the ecosystem. So we want to educate young people to have them mindful of what's going on when it comes to environmental justice and the future. Now, when you think of art museum, you don't think about those kinds of things that are happening, that can happen, that things that happen behind the scenes to operate a best-in-class art museum such as the IMA.
Dr. Burnett, thank you for sharing that. Another area that I wanted you to touch upon a little bit more is the International Council of Museums redefinition of a museum. Mm-hmm. So when you say that there's an effort for more inclusivity, diversity, mm-hmm. Can you go into that a little bit more? Share what?
Of course. It's everywhere. It's in the collection, in who your patrons are, who your guests are. Once again, what I said about what goes on behind the scenes in, to open an exhibit such as the We the Culture exhibit, there's a lot of moving parts. And traditionally we've had marginalized means pushed to the margins, not included. So you have these traditionally marginalized audiences that you don't traditionally see when you walk through a museum, like who's walking around observing and taking in the art. So with this redefinition, we have to be super intentional about not marginalizing any community through your exhibits and through your programming. I mean, really, we don't think a lot about programming. There's a lot that goes on from a programming perspective at museums, like even, seeing the art through a curator's eyes. Having diversity within your curator staff, and diversity, people often think about race, but it's really all kinds of ways of diversity. That's a really big word. And then diversity of thought. Like, for example, a compliment to my board for hiring someone who is not in the world traditionally as the president and CEO of Newfields. So I bring a diverse perspective. I'm a Black female, so people may focus on that, but I also have a diversity of thought. I'm a military wife. I was raised in Cleveland. I'm first generation. I'm an engineer. I have a very diverse background as president of a university. So I would hope that I'm hired because of my leadership skills, but I bring my diversity of thought, which I think is most important, which is the feeling that I got from my board, which is why I was attracted to the position, because they really were interested in my perspective on cultural institutions and anchor institutions. And I had read everything you could read about Newfields. And I was super attracted to the position because of Newfield's experience. Some people think that that would have made me not attracted to it, but I saw that as such an opportunity to be a template for achieving what the International Council of Museum is defining as a museum. And that was before I'd even seen that definition. I mean, that definition helped me. That was another God moment, divine moment for me, because that definition codified what I felt in my spirit that we could do at Newfields.
Awesome. So I know for a lot of nonprofits, especially in light of the recent events of the past couple of years, they really want to redefine their nonprofits, their outreach. Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for how do you communicate that, or how do you engage different populations on we're new, we're doing something new, we're doing something different, and make it more welcoming?
It has to be intentional and heartfelt. The terms I love to use, and I started doing this, and we started this in Austin, was it's heart work as opposed to hard work. Institutional racism is not about people as much as it's about systems. And you have to be very intentional about what you do. And your programming has to come from the heart. It can't be a check the box. It can't be something that you do that's performative. It has to be something that you really have thought it through on how you deliver it. Like within our educational programming, what does our community need? And how can we use the resources that Newfields has to be able to bring these communities in? And it's not something where we dictate to you what you need. We have to listen to what your needs are, and then take our areas of expertise and our gifts, our resources, to wrap those around how you do what you do to lift us all. Because we need the community more than the community needs us for us to be successful. And that's a different way of thinking about it. Because if I think that, the community needs Newfields, then I'm going to sit on this, this 100 acres of property and wait for everyone to come. And that's just not going to happen. It may happen in the beginning, but then you can't rest on your laurels because the world is changing around us. So we need the community to tell us what their needs are for us to use our resources to give back, or to give, I wouldn't even say give back, but to give to our community. And that's what cultural institutions are designed to do. And even organizations that serve people, you cannot serve those you don't love. So you have to, a very dear friend of mine said that in a meeting, and I just embraced that, because you have to love that community that you're serving. And through that love, you understand who people are. And then you start to dismantle these long-standing systems that have worked against being inclusive. And it takes time to dismantle that. And it takes a lot of the self-reflection and individual reflection on how people think and respond and how they show up day to day to do their work. So if I show up and I have a closed mind, you're not being helpful to the community, and you're definitely not being helpful to Newfields.
Wow, very good. Well, thank you. That's I think we're probably in the home stretch here. I heard you talking, I think, about kind of engaging and people seeing Newfields as a place they want to be on a recurring basis. Because I think I'm guilty. I think sometimes of thinking of museums as a place that you go every few years to go through and see, appreciate it. you know, and then you say, okay, I've done that.
Right.
But I don't hear, that's not the relationship you're looking for. It sounds like you think
Right.
that mean that there are, not that everybody, but a lot of people could become much more regular visitors, members, if that's
Right.
the you know, the language, to see that as a second or a third place for them almost.
You're exactly right. Where it has a diverse set of offerings, where we have something for everyone. Like even in the short term, we have harvest nights, we have winter lights, we had the We the Culture Open, the Stephen Sprouse exhibit. So a lot of things are happening, but then we also have to deliver programming. Camps specific to young people, camps specific to all kinds of generations of people, the greenhouse, master gardening, our culinary arts, the loom. So we have to be consistently offering things so that we are not marginalizing, pushing to the margins those, because I'm of that same era as you, Bryan, where, you know, you go to the museum every summer and you just kind of walk away from it because you didn't find yourself there. And
It's a building.
Yeah, it's a building, and it's so much more than that. It's just so much more than that. So we want to be that place where you walk away with that really good feeling, and you want to return back to get your soul filled up again in the very near future. So you become a member of Newfields, and then we send you all of our, literature on what's happening in Newfields. And so you're constantly engaged. And then we're listening when you're here, so that we can consistently, with Harvest Nights, this is my first one, but I've sat in several meetings in the preparations, and we're doing a lot of new things this year because of what people told us. So that we can continue to refine who we are and continue to change and continue to come with these new, fresh ideas, not just to entertain. We want to do that. That's a part of the mission. That's the enriching lives. But enriching lives, entertainment is fun and knowledge-based all at the same time.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Burnett. I'm a big fan of Newfields. I used to call it the Indianapolis Museum of Art, but I've been a member and just love it. So I'm happy to see you there. And again, thank you for joining us and
thank you.
Sharing your story.
Thank you very much. Very much.
Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of the Charitable Advisors Not-for-Profit News Podcast. Please subscribe where you listen to podcasts, and be sure to also subscribe to our weekly email newsletter at charitableadvisors.com, where we bring you the latest news, jobs, and training opportunities for nonprofits in Central Indiana.